percent overall from the field, but he was also 50% from threes. He's 5 of 10.
I know you're out there. It's okay. Stand back there.
No, more than likely, you're going to get that number one seed. And so I want Houston to be ranked at number one.
Welcome into another episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. Of course, this is Let's Rage Coogs, the unofficial Houston postgame show after each and every football and men's basketball show. Of course, we also like to say thank you to our secondary sponsor for this episode, which is Star Pizza, with 3 locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game. Be sure to stop by any of their locations every Tuesday during lunchtime for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Star Pizza, as always, has had free delivery since 1976. We're coming off the heels of number 4 ranked Houston's toughest test, at least up to this point, in the Halal Guys challenge against the Texas A&M Aggies, and it was the Cougars coming out victorious 70-66. Although it was far from pretty, it was a tale of two halves for Houston, and really the difference in that second half was obviously, of course, for the Aggies, Wade Taylor, that just caught fire in that second half. He only had 8 points in the first half. At halftime, he had 26 points in the second half, 7 of 16 shooting, hit 6 out of the 12 threes that he shot, and it gave Houston all kinds of headaches. But joining me, as always, Dayon Dunlap. Dayon, how you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing well. What a game. Just what a game. Taylor caught fire. It's a lot to get into, but I'm doing well.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Obviously, the most important thing from the game is that Houston found a way to win. They hanged on, and that's what good teams do. And coming out victorious, Houston now improved to 11-0 on the season. Only 2 non-conference games left on the schedule, that being this upcoming Thursday, the next one for Houston against Texas State. But let's talk about this game against the Aggies. Like I mentioned, the first half, completely different script for the Houston Cougars. And, well, after the first 5 minutes or so, first 4 minutes, the Texas A&M Aggies jumped out to a 7-0 early spark. But I think what Houston did really well from that point onward up to halftime was just the defensive intensity. They locked down Texas A&M to close down the half. They held them to 23 points at halftime. Texas A&M had to work hard for every single basket that they got. And the Cougars were doing a good job finishing possessions, and I'll give credit to Houston offensively. They did a good job of running up and down the court when they would get those rebounds. There was a lot of things that for, like, let me get that number specifically, but in the first half, Houston fast break points. They had 10 fast break points to just Texas A&M's 2, and that was a big reason why they were able to build that 38-23 point lead at halftime. And that was not the case in the second half. Houston only 1 fast break point in that second half. So obviously the Aggies adjusted, but let's talk about the game, because like I said, they found a way to win, which is the most important thing. But second half, a lot of headaches, and a couple of different areas where I don't even necessarily expose, might not be the right word, but we got to see Houston and down the stretch how they would execute in a pressure situation. And Jamal Shead, Emmanuel Sharp, they showed out big time down the stretch in this game.
Yeah, let's start with the first half. I think, like you said, one of the main differences not only was the defensive intensity that Houston played with, and they were contesting every shot, making everything tough for Texas A&M. And they're using defense to ignite their offense, get out in transition, like you said, 10 fast break points, and getting those unscripted points, I think, is what this Houston Cougars team is at their best at when they're playing fast break and getting out in transition. Then, like you said, in the second half, only one transition point. And when the game slows down like that, and that's what I talked about in previous episodes, I want to see in pressure situations like that, who is Coach Sampson going to get the ball to? And you see, I think the score was 57-51. At the time, Coach Sampson went back-to-back isolations, 4 down with Jamal at the top. And I mentioned with the lineup with Jamal, LJ, and Emmanuel, Jamal really is the best player that can get his points off the dribble. And so you look when the game slowed down, Houston went most of it was either pick and roll or isolation with Jamal because of in the half court set. You got to find a way either beat somebody off the dribble or get a pick and roll. And so that's one thing I've stood out. But the boards, it was a battle of the boards. Both teams was tenacious on the reboundings. I mean, it seems like every rebound was a fight to get to. I mean, number one team, it feels like Houston is the top two teams, I would say. I think A&M came in number one, but you see Houston was right there with them, and the rebounding total was even. But transition, Houston is their best. But when the game slows down, I was wanting to see what Houston does because when Damian's not on the floor, if it's just Jamal with LJ and Emmanuel really, it's a lot of he really stepped up. He's continuing to evolve. He's more than just a three-point shooter. He's showing time and time again that he can get his off the dribble in regards to attacking the closeout. He's really doing a good job this year attacking closeout and making the defense rotate and also making plays. J1 had a big play as well. Off the dribble, defense was sagging off him at the free throw line, daring him to shoot the free throw. He attacked the space and created a three. I think put Houston up either 5 or 6 at the time in the second half.
You said the rebounding battle was dead even, and you're not exaggerating. Both teams finished with 37 rebounds for the game. It was that type of contest. But joining us, he was at the Toyota Center for the Halaga Showcase. Or what was the actual name of the event? Was it the Showcase or the Challenge between Houston, Texas A&M, and then obviously, of course, UT and LSU. By the way, we got to talk about Texas A&M, or not Texas A&M, the Toyota Center, and the parking charge that they had for the media that covered the event, but I digress. That's not important. Kris, thank you for joining us. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. You know, you touched on the parking. The media had to pay to park. I parked on the street, but I'm surprised you mentioned the sponsor of the doubleheader. They're not to promote the event, so it was just doubleheader to Toyota Center as far as I'm concerned. Hey, I think business is business. I'm just being real. You know, they did feed us at halftime. I think with they received some negative flack because that was word early in the week that was not going to be the case. But we had some food at halftime. It was good, but I'm not going to give them plugs unnecessarily.
So we'll just call it the MT at the Toyota Center that included the Houston Cougars and Texas A&M Aggies. But Kris, on all seriousness, when it comes to the topic of the game in itself, a good test for Houston, specifically when it came to the second half. They had to battle through adversity and Houston found a way to win, which again, hear the old saying, it's kind of cliche where good teams, they figure out a way to win because every game's not necessarily going to be the pretty that Houston's kind of had the first 10 games of the season. And kind of the old saying that the head assistant and Kellen Sampson always says, at least he sometimes tweets out for road games, all road games are street fights. Well, this neutral site game was a street fight for both teams. And again, Cougars showed their toughness. They showed their mental poise, fortitude, because I mean, down the stretch, you could feel the momentum changing over the course as the minutes ticked down in the second half. Wade Taylor just did not cool off. And some of the threes that he hit, kudos to him because there were some incredibly tough shots. But they executed down the stretch. And, you know, I know in previous shows we had talked about, hey, Jamal Shead hasn't really necessarily been...
Sorry to cut you off, Andy, but those type of shots he made and the way he played, Houston doesn't really have a shot creator and a shot maker like that. Jamal made a good step back three, but that was that's not something that he can do consistently throughout a game. He might make it a couple times, but what was he, 2 for 3 today? And it's about Jamal. It's about those timely points. I don't think he's not a high volume scorer, but I was waiting to see who's going to be the go-to player when the game slows down and half court set, and it looked like it's going to be Jamal.
Coach Sampson said post game that he has to do a better job. He did not do a good enough job down the stretch in play calling. So he took a lot of the blame on himself, like I think you respect head coaches to do. I'm not sure. Some of those shots the Cougs made, the tip ends, they had 5 or 6 tip ends, ball just wouldn't fall. You know, some of those LJ Cryer shots, open shots, missed. They just rolled out. On the other hand,
some rebounds at Houston had layups they just couldn't hit.
On the other hand, Wade Taylor IV made some tough ass shots.
He did.
Coach Sampson said it. He made some tough shots, and kudos to him. He made some tough shots. And folks who didn't see it, I put it on Threads and X. Musk. Wade Taylor IV was 0 for 9 from 3 on Sunday against Memphis. He was 6 for 12 today. So somewhere in between is his 3-point shooting. He was nothing on Sunday, and he was awesome today against Houston. Cougs still find a way to win after the timeout. Emmanuel Sharp hit a clutch 3. Kudos to Emmanuel stepping up because he had some shots roll out. Did not shake his confidence. He came through and then iced it with those free throws. I want to say this. Coach Sampson did say this. He mentioned it. Jamal Shedd went for that steal on inbounds unnecessarily, and then Wade hit another 3. Stuff like he didn't need to gamble for that. They were up 5. This place tight defense, but hey, it happens. Cougs still won. Get ready for the next game.
That is a great point by Big Jack 512 on YouTube. The Aggies had 21 second chance points. Houston only had 9, which, again, that was another big difference in that second half. It seemed like a lot, not all, but a good amount of the 50-50 balls went in Texas A&M's favor, especially down that stretch when they did that rally. I also want to point out, it seems like there's a new feature from StreamYard, but Scott Doak joining us from X. It's a new feature that StreamYard continues to add different stuff. So I just wanted to point out. But of course, we need to talk about the big headliner that came out of this game, and unfortunately, it's very bad news. Giancarlo did not touch on it, but Terrence Arsenal. Kelvin Sampson said in the post-game press, correct, Chris, suffered a torn Achilles and he will miss the remainder of the 2023-24 season. And unfortunately, the brutal blow to Terrence Arsenal, obviously, just barely getting halfway into his sophomore season. So much potential. And what makes it even worse is that last couple of games, you could kind of see him starting to put together consistent performances. And now a devastating injury like that, where it's a major setback. And all, I mean, here, us from the sidelines, all we can say is wish for him for a speedy recovery, but you just hate to see it. Like an injury like that, you never count on it, and it's always unfortunate when it happens.
It was, and Coach Sampson in his post game was talking about the game, and then he kind of just shifted gears and he said the tone in his voice changed. I just feel bad for Terrence. I feel so bad for Terrence. Torn Achilles. He was playing well. 19 rebounds in the last 2 games. Things were starting to click for him. Everything was going for him. And then he's out for the season. And that's pretty much what Coach said, how he said it. He feels really bad for Terrence. It's a tough injury, and it's at least a year for recovery. And really not a lot of players after Achilles tears, it takes a second year for them to get back to their previous form. So it is a setback. Who's going to replace him? Who knows? It could be Ramon Walker. It could be Malik Wilson. We'll have to wait and see. They'll work on it and figure out what's best for the rotation and the team going forward. But it's a tough injury. And, I had a picture of him in the boot. And it does look like an Achilles injury because no one was around him when it happened. And he hopped off the floor immediately and then was helped to the locker room. And all of us sitting at our media table kind of just like, yeah, that's a bad look. And it, so we all thought it was going to be an Achilles, and that's what it was. Coach Sampson said so after the game.
So gut-wrenching. You feel for the kid, really, because you know how much hard work he's put in. Like Sampson said, he's had begun to stack together performances, and all you can say, hopefully, a speedy recovery and the process turns around. Now, when it comes to how Houston, the blow that it's the impact of that loss, you can't even put it into words because of how much he's kind of a utility man for Houston. He did so many different things. He wore so many different hats for the Cougars. You're not really going to be able to plug in one player and have him fill that role of Terrence Arsenal, at least in my opinion.
No, because he was starting to rebound better. He was starting to attack the basket off the dribble better. His game was improving overall, all around games. So it's a tough blow for him, obviously, but for the team, it might take 2 people to fill to replace what he does on the court. We'll see. And Scott, thank you for letting us know posts on Musk are now visible for us. Coach Sampson said it, that Javier Francis he would like the bigs to dunk the ball. Don't put it down on the floor. Keep it up high and just dunk it. Keep Javier France, keep his confidence up because he's thinking too much sometimes in games and he gets down on himself more than the fans do. He's got to keep his confidence. It was good to see him get that dunk after he traveled on the previous possession, which he had a dunk. So his teammates still believe in him. So that's good. Just got to keep building him up because I said it before, he's only been playing ball for 7 years. So that's not a long time if basketball is not your first sport. So just stick with him, and he's what the Cougs have right now. Coach Buzz said for the Aggies, said something kind of interesting. He said that the Aggies changed and went with a bigger lineup today, which was unusual for them because he wanted to really compete with the Cougs' physical nature. So he went with bigger players up front, 3, 4, and 5. Utah may have been a taller front court, but they were nowhere as near as strong and physical as the Aggies' front court. So Buzz said that this is one reason why they went big was to compete with the Cougs overall.
And they did a hell of a job because it was physical. You could tell how really Texas A&M stepped up to the plate. And there are moments, like I said, it seemed like they were the aggressors over Houston in some stretches in that second half. So props to Texas A&M for giving Houston all they could handle and more. I do want to bring up this comment from Rex32. Kris, you were at Toyota Center. You can comment on this. The energy at the arena felt like a March Madness game. From television, it certainly sounded like it. It was a dead even 50-50 split, and there was just a lot of excitement. And when the minutes were ticking down towards the end of the second half.
And Joe Mendez really kind of stole some of my thunder with his comment right after Rex's. Salute to the Cougar fans. They showed up for the first game of a doubleheader. I walked around and saw a lot of Cougar Red in the building, and they were there obviously for the second game. So it was great to see Coug fans at the game for both games, and it was loud, and the Coug chants were good. So it's excellent to see. It's another example of the fan base for men's hoops growing, and it's just it warms my heart because I remember those dark days, and this was not the case. So it was great to see, and the Cougs will be back at Toyota Center next season. Coach Sampson's already said that. Mentioned earlier this week, and it was confirmed by one of the organizers, promoters of today's event that is working on the opponent. And as a person told me, it'll be someone good for Houston. Competition-wise, I said, okay, looking forward to it. And Dayon, I want to add on to what you said earlier. One of the things about Juwan Roberts, had a career-high 7 assists. Coach Sampson mentioned they tweaked their offense to go through Juwan in that mid-post and throw that cross-court pass, the screen having the open shooter. That was one of the wrinkles they added to the offense today. And it was great. You know, there was some question about some folks whether Juwan would play with the knee swelling, all that. He was going to play. He was going to play. You know, he tried to practice and all that. He was going to play. So the warrior there he is. What he had? He almost had a triple-double, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
10, 11, and 7
rebounds and 7 assists.
Yeah, he had a good game, really a great game. Definitely with his playmaking. There's many times where he saw the rotation and he just made the extra pass. But the clutchest play and the beautiful play is when they sagged off of him. Right, he caught it right there at the free throw line, and he attacked the space and Drew made the other defender reach in and kicked it to Emmanuel for 3. I mean, just plays like that and showing his playmaking ability, because you need other playmakers, especially with Coach Sampson, and seems like he's going to put the ball in Jamal's hands down the stretch, and when the game slows down to half court, and look for him to score, and always with the option to pass. But some of that was 4 down, isolation, Jamal make a play, 2 score to shoot the ball. And we sometimes that's just to get the ball on the rim to give us a chance to rebound it. But with having a chance and opportunity to have J1 as a playmaker in that mid post with the shooters on the outside like LJ and Wade Manuel shooting the ball, I think it's going to be really good. I think, and it's going to some philosophy is going to have to change a little bit with Terrence Sapp, because he was that 4 guard to come in when it's 4 guard lineup. And so I think there a few players probably split those minutes. Maybe Ramon Walker, he can definitely come in and give that can help out with the rebounding for sure. And I think he's a really good slasher, and he's inept at getting to the free throw line. It seems like when he's in the game, a few things he's going to do. He's going to rebound, he's going to draw a charge, and he's going to get to the free throw line.
And I'd like to see we talked about it on like almost all of our shows. I'd like to see the Cougs go to Juan in the post, mid post more, because opponents will have to make a choice. Either let him go to work 1-on-1 in the post, that jump hook, or double, and then he'll just kick it out to either across the court for an open shooter or have the hockey assist. It's another wrinkle for Houston that I think they should utilize more for the rest of this season.
On the topic of big men that had strong performances, Jojo Tugler went in there. He had 3 blocks, still had 3 personal fouls. So it looks like consistently when he goes in the game, he's going to be make his presence felt with a couple of hard fouls. But again, his athleticism was showcased. He had 5 rebounds as well, and he had a couple of key points. He did a good job running the floor, as honestly consistently he has done this season. We had a couple of easy layups just by simply sprinting down the floor, but his energy, and he changed a couple of shots down the stretch throughout the game as well. So he might be one of those players that, with Arsenal's absence, is asked to not only play more minutes, obviously at the 4, but maybe relied upon a little bit more, because it's going to be him, Tugler, and Francis that are really the only quote-unquote bigs that Houston have left. I know they have Cedric Lott in as well, but I don't think he's necessarily ready at this point for consistent minutes.
And JoJo, Coach Sampson mentioned this. He was a little bit out of position when they were on the high screens guarding Wade Taylor, which allowed Wade to split them a few times. So that's something he has to learn to do better defensively for positioning. But he's a freshman, so he'll make that adjustment. A lot of learning today. Coach Sampson, team did not play great. The Aggies didn't play great either. It was competitive, fun to see both teams going at it, competing. But there's enough for both coaches, staffs to take and learn from this game for them to get ready for conference play in Big 12 and the SEC for the Aggies.
Yeah, I think JoJo is a player whose role will grow even more and will be counted on even more. So I think it'll be even more apparent for him to stay out of foul trouble. And to me today, he looked comfortable out there. I don't really see many moments outside of some of that pick and roll coverage. And most of that's just a great player with Taylor being able to have the ball handling ability to get by him. And so I'm not really going to hold that against him. But other than that, I think he looks comfortable. Like you said, Andy, a lot of things that don't show up on the stat sheet is him changing shots. One time he trying to get position, they push him out of bounds, he draws a foul. So he was out there and his presence was definitely felt. And so watching him, he looked comfortable. He looked like he belonged. The physicality, he looked like he definitely looked apart. And so I think his role will go bigger. He seems to be getting more comfortable out there. The game might be slowing down for him a little bit more because 3 fouls in the way this physical game, you expect the rate he was playing through all this year, he would have fouled out. But 3 fouls is good. And with the way physicality of that game, like he looked like the game was slowing down and he's getting more comfortable out there in this game. So I'm expecting him to get even better and better.
Most definitely.
I want to touch on Damian Dunn. Go ahead, Andy.
We'll get to Damian Dunn, but real quickly on a pause. Thank each and every single one of you guys that are taking your time out of this Saturday afternoon, evening, as we hit the 5:30 mark here on December 16th. Dang, it's already, but we're closer to 2024 now compared to the beginning of the month. But we have a good amount of viewers now that we can actually see the tally of viewers that are on the X platform. So that's pretty cool. But those of you joining us live, and even if you're watching us the next day or whenever you may be watching, this is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. Let's Rage Coogs is the original, unofficial Houston post-game show for each and every single Houston Cougars men's and football game, men's basketball and football game. And of course, it is presented by the Saxenian Family. We'd like to say thank you to Steve Saxenian for being a primary sponsor of each and every single regular season men's basketball show this year. And of course, we also like to say thank you to our secondary sponsor for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, and that is Star Pizza, with 3 locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game. Be sure to stop by any of their locations every Tuesday during lunchtime for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Star Pizza, as always, has had free delivery since 1976. Kris, we can go back because yes, we have to talk about Damian Dunn. Sammy Vienna mentioned that he says he needs to see more from Dunn. Seems to still be searching for his role. That turnover down the stretch, that cannot happen. That's an inexcusable turnover of just not game awareness, not being able to move on the inbound in that moment.
And Coach Sampson, again, we got a smart audience. Coach mentioned that in post game. Everyone knows the particular possession timeout. It's a spot timeout. You cannot move. Damian had a brain cramp. Started moving, traveling violation or an inbounds violation, whatever the official term is. Could have been costly. Could have cost the game. 3 turnovers for him in only 15 minutes. He's got to do better. I think he will. He's in his head too much right now. Coach Sampson had a lot of positive to say about him in our presser earlier this week. He's practicing better. He just got to bring that stuff from practice into the game. I still believe in him. I think he's overthinking what to do rather than just reacting to the situation.
I will say, starting defensively with Damian Dunn, he got the system down. You watching him, you can see him. He's pointing out, he's getting back, and he's attentive on the defensive end. But offensively, just watch him. It seems like he's adjusting to playing for Coach Sampson. It seems like he's thinking about making that mistake of getting pulled out instead of just hooping. And I think the more minutes he played, and I think his minutes will go up even more now that Terrence is out for the season. I think he's another player who role will go over more. And now I think he'll know that he'll get for sure a certain amount of minutes a night. And I think with him, I think that would be even more better for him because he'll be able to get more in the rhythm and be able to get more shots. He's a player, you get him volume shots and he'll get you a lot of points, but I know that's not needed. But on a game-to-game basis, there will be games in the half court Houston will go to him and they'll feature him because he's having a good game. But I think with the way the season will go on from here on out, I expect him to play even better, his role to go more, him be setting them more, and be knowing that he's going to be counted upon to produce. And I think that's a whole different mindset from being like, I know I'm gonna play, but now I'm looking on my shoulder. If I make a mistake, am I going to get pulled out and I only play an X? I think his best is coming.
And let me say this, folks saying that they are disappointed in him. Damian, the program he came from is different than the program LJ Cry came from. Okay?
It's night and day difference.
It's night and day difference. There's a whole nother level of basketball between Baylor and Temple. So it's taking longer for an adjustment. Damian has not forgotten how to play basketball, but this is different. Temple basketball is different than Houston basketball. So everybody don't panic. He still has plenty of time to play well, and I believe he will the rest of this season.
It's certainly when you're thinking about
they're struggling, and he's 11-0. The team's 11-0.
Okay. Yeah, what I was going to say, so it's certainly when you talk about candidates to potentially fill the void for Terrence Arsenault, he is certainly at the top of the list to be able to really find a rhythm, find confidence, like you mentioned, Kris, and being able to see much more of the player that we saw when he was with Temple against Houston. A couple other noteworthy things to point out in this game. Houston had only 11 turnovers against A&M. They had 10 blocks again. We talked about JoJo Tugler, but Xavier Francis had 3 blocks in by himself as well. And just top to bottom rebounding margin. Yeah, Jamal Shead had 2. You know what? I know he kind of mentioned it, but
he had the most impressive block on a
Yes.
jump shot. That was so Jamal is the best defensive player in college basketball, on-ball defender. He's the best because some of those plays, and he made it tough. I know Taylor had what he had, but some of that was off pick and roll. It wasn't just he beating Jamal on that. On those isolation plays, a lot of Jamal got the best. Someone was still in it. Jamal is an elite defender, 1,000%. Sorry,
I couldn't agree more. No, I couldn't agree more. We were literally about to say the same thing, and we just got to look at that last play. When he took a 3, Jamal Shead guarded him one-on-one, didn't let him go anywhere. He went left, right. He went east to west, didn't go north south. Settled for a tough fadeaway step back, and it didn't fall through. So, absolutely, now Texas A&M ended up getting offensive rebound. They had a chance to tie free throw didn't go, but Jamal Shed, you couldn't have asked for any better defense on that second last possession. Chris, Celtic Nation asked, what are the rules on medical red shirts for Terrence Arsenal? And correct me if I'm wrong, is it still where it's 33% of a season for a player?
It's roughly 6 games. So
so
roughly
he's
6 games.
way
So
past.
yeah, he can't get this back for medical red shirt. Yeah.
Interesting. But
unless it's changed, and who knows what way NCAA rules seem to be changing.
Yes,
I don't believe he'll get this medical red shirt back yet. So
before I go, I just want to say, great game. Appreciate everyone who's tuned in. I think the numbers are continuously to come right now. And man, great game. Great win for Houston. Their defense is something to be reckoned with. Can't wait till they continue the season. Big 12 play. Prayers for Terrence and his family. I know he's going to come back 1,000% better, and it's going to take time. But sad for him because he was just hitting his stride. But it's God's plan, and so prayers for him and his family. But as always, go Cougs.
Take care, man.
You didn't have said better, Dan.
And Andy, I want to say this as much. I've said it a few times on social media. Thank you to the folks who recognized me at the game today and gave us our props for watching this show and our shows. It's much appreciated. And don't be a stranger. We still got more content coming.
Can't say it better. Can't say it better. It's always an awesome moment to be able to just get pulled aside and see, people do watch. It does make a difference. And at the end of the day, this is a space for all Cougs fans to be able to talk. And, with the men's basketball team, it more often than not is celebrate a win. And obviously we saw the other side of the spectrum, also an opportunity just to have discourse and talk about the Houston Cougars game that just happened. Shout out TI7791. He says, great show as always. Keep grinding. Joe Mendes said on a different note, he said that Doug Belk will be the USC's defensive coordinator.
Is that true? well,
let me do some digging about that. But
I
on
see
the topic,
go ahead. I'm sorry. It's the last comments make it's funny. Go ahead.
No, yeah, indeed. According to 247 Sports, some guy, national college football writer named Matt Zenitz, reported that USC is expected to hire Doug Belk as defensive backs coach. So not defensive coordinator, defensive backs coach. Okay. So, but yeah, he is heading to USC to coach the defense. So, I mean, at the end of the day, best wishes to him, and hopefully he's able to find his stride. Celtic Nation. There have been a lot of football commitments coming, honestly, even during the course of the men's basketball game. Cell Tension kind of throwing shade at the previous admin. I thought this wasn't supposed to happen these days, but there most definitely still a lot of high school commitments.
I thought the recruiting for the class of 24 was over, right? That ship had sailed. Isn't that what we heard? We were told.
It was a famous comment that, according to the Chronicle, was one of the final nails in that coffin. So, well, good to see for Houston being able to get high school commitments and really, again, trying to turn the tide around that program. When it comes to this program, the men's basketball program, Chris, we talked about it with Dayon before you hopped on. Coug Nation talked about Ramon Walker. Ramon Walker did not play more than 6 games in last season, correct? Or it was like on the bubble.
He got a red shirt. Yep.
Yes. But I'm trying to remember. He didn't. He played in around 6-7 games.
Well, but his case was a medical red shirt is different. So, and his situation was different. Let's put it like that for a red shirt.
Gotcha. Noted. Well, but what I was gonna say in terms of how this game turned out between Houston, Texas A&M, obviously this is the closest game that Houston has been in this season, 11 games into the year. A great challenge, specifically when it came to adversity that I had to face. We mentioned a comment earlier where it had the feel of an NCAA tournament game, a great test, honestly, with just about 2.5 weeks until Big 12 conference play starts for the Houston Cougars, where most definitely there's going to be a lot of games that go down the wire like this, and Houston's going to have to find ways to pull out close and honestly scrappy victories like this one was against the Aggies. How do you feel the Cougars did in this really first test so far this season? We talked about Emmanuel Sharp, we talked about Jamal Shed, how they came up big down the stretch, but they were able to make enough plays to come away with a win. And even defensively, I think explosive was not the right word, but there are a couple areas here and there where some little things that Houston has to improve on, specifically when it comes to late game rebound. Even though, like we mentioned, Jamal Shed played great defense on Taylor on that basically really the last offensive play that A&M had. The Aggies did get the offensive rebound. If they make those both free throws, it's a tied game, 68-68 down the stretch, and who knows what happens after that.
Yeah, the Cougs did some things. Kudos to the Aggies for crashing the boards down the stretch. I think Javier had 4 fouls. He was kind of tentative on that last possession. He's ready to foul out, which, hey man, get the rebound, kind of thing. But he's got to do a better job down the stretch, being more physical. I'm going to say this because Coach Gavi Lewis said this. There's probably a clip of it, audio, video, whatever. One of the things Coach Lewis told his big men years ago, and I think Javier needs to adopt it. When you get around the rim, just dunk the doggone thing. Just dunk the ball. Coach Lewis said something a little different. He didn't swear, but he said, in this country slang, just dunk the doggone thing. Something like that. Don't worry about dribbling. Don't worry about, if you got to take a pivot, whatever. Just dunk it. Same for JoJo. Just dunk the basketball. Physicality, the Aggies crashed the boards. Cougs, you saw some things that could be problematic down the stretch, but in terms of Big 12 play, we've said it, Andy, you've said it. The Cougs will lose games in Big 12 this season. Okay? They will not go undefeated. They might play great, shoot great in a game or two, and still lose in the Big 12 because that's Big 12 basketball. The Aggies needed this game. They're coming off a home loss to Memphis. They were kind of just going through the motions on Sunday. They were just not really fired up and focused and locked in. When they got down 21 today, they seemed to just hit a switch. And Wade Taylor said, as Coach Sampson said, Coach Buzz, he did a smart thing. He stopped calling plays because we shut that stuff down. He just said, Wade, go be a hero. And Wade Taylor was a hero, So he got going, hit some tough shots. And it's the beauty and the curse of college basketball. Andy, I've said it a while. It only takes one time to lose in the tournament, and that's it. It just takes one player to get hot. That's all it takes.
Yeah,
just one player.
It seemed like flashbacks to last year's Sweet 16 game when Nigel Pack burying threes left and right, off the screens, off the dribble, you name it. Honestly, this game had a similar feel to not necessarily that Miami game, but it was much more the regular season game against Alabama, where, again, similar position. Houston built a relatively comfortable double-digit lead, and then second half, kind of a tale of a different story in which the Crimson Tide caught fire and Houston kind of maybe necessarily didn't execute the best way possible. And in that game, the Crimson Tide were able to make enough plays down the stretch to walk away with the victory. In this game, Houston was able to make just enough plays to hang on to the victory. So yeah, absolutely. To your point, that's just college basketball. You never know. Even from half to half, things can change. A player could catch fire. You never know what momentum play can light a spark, and it's the beauty and it's the curse of why college basketball is, honestly, there's not any other sport that matches when it comes to excitement about really on any given day, any given half, anything can happen, and you live on and you move on. There's nothing much like it.
And that's one thing I do think that's different about this year's Cougs is I think they would have lost this game last year. Emmanuel Shop, another year under his belt in the program. He took that three, no hesitation, clutch, swish. The last 30 seconds was really good execution for Houston after the game was tied. Jamal Shed gambling for the steal and missing kept the Aggies in it and gave the Aggies a chance. They were up 5. Cougars were up 5. Yeah. 68-63. Jamal doesn't gamble and just plays good defense. Wade Taylor may not have a chance to take that shot, misses that shot. So, hey, but it's a good win. The Aggies were ranked 23rd in the net rankings, so it's a Another
Wow.
Q1 win for the Cougs. It's all that matters.
And with that being said, there are only two non-conference games on the schedule. The next one coming this Thursday at home against Texas State. What can Houston expect from Texas State, Kris?
It's all about what the Cougs do and how they adjust to game one without Terrence Arsenault. I haven't seen much on Texas State this season to giving a scouting report on them. But I'd like to see the Cougs continue to go to Juwan Roberts in the post, the mid post, draw double teams, kick outs to open 3-point shooters. I think zone defenses continue to give the Cougs issues because
Texas A&M. Did A&M go into a bit of a 3-2 zone when
it was like
the
a junk defense. Coach Buzz Williams did not describe what it was. He was asked about the changes he made in the second half, and he wouldn't get into specifics. But the Aggies kind of had a junk defense, and the Cougs, they stopped moving the ball. They got stagnant offensively, late in the shot clock. It's just best, in my opinion, just continue your offense, tweak it here and there, but be aggressive and attack. And you can set high picks for zone defenses and get open shots. Just another thing to learn going forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an interesting defense that the Aggies were playing, and it even looked like in stretches it might have even been 1-3-1. So, again, kudos to Texas A&M because they did dig deep and they found some momentum, some fire, and they rallied back and gave Houston a big scare. I do want to bring up Joe Mendez's comment. Reportedly, it seems like Case Keenum's going to be starting for the Texans tomorrow against the Tennessee Titans. So, obviously, of course, the UH alum in Case Keenum gets another chance to start for the hometown team in a pretty big game for the Texans, by the way. If they come out victorious, led by Keenum, they need that for any playoff aspirations they have. H-Town Big Dob says Juwan Roberts definitely needs to be more aggressive, and we shall see, Kris. Like going back to last season, you've been a constant message about getting him more involved touches in the post. I don't necessarily think it's more about him being aggressive, much more just so getting more opportunities. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see him get more touches in the post, but aggressive, I'm kind of backing away from it because his knee is bothering him. Okay, we don't know how serious it is, how severe it is, so that may limit his explosiveness and things like that, offensively, defensively. But today, despite missing most of practice this week, he still had 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists. 7 assists were a career high. So that's the reason why I like to see the offense run through him more to draw double teams from the defense and to get kickouts for open looks for your shooters like Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer.
One of the big reasons why that knee's been bothering him has been due to swelling, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's obviously always
and it's had to been drained a few times. So that lets you know that it's an issue.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I mean, depending on the severity, might be something that he has to handle the moment Houston's regular season's over.
Right. And he may have to miss practices a lot, for the rest of the season to limit the swelling in the knee, but be ready for the games. So, and he's been around so long, he doesn't need to practice that much, except maybe conditioning kind of things. He knows the offense and the defense, all that. So,
Absolutely. But that's pretty much going to wrap things down for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. Again, we'd like to say thank you to each and every single one of you that has taken the time here on this Saturday evening / late afternoon to watch this episode of Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. As always, thank you to Steve Saxenian for being the primary sponsor for not only this episode of Let's Rage Coogs, but every regular season men's basketball postgame show of LRC. Of course, our secondary sponsor today in Star Pizza with 3 locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game. Be sure to stop by any of their locations every Tuesday during lunchtime for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Star Pizza, as always, has free delivery since 1976. Oh, wow. We have a Memphis Tiger fan that wandered into the YouTube.
He must miss us. Living in the head rent-free. Thank you, Eric.
Eric Gilliam
Appreciate it.
I chimed in with the comment. And we appreciate all viewers, regardless of what you have to say. But as always, people can find me on Twitter at @Ayones_5. Most importantly, if you are new to either the Houston Rombar Review or the Podslam Jamma YouTube channel, or even now, if you're new to the X channel, which we can see there are currently a handful of viewers still on Elon's platform, like you mentioned earlier, Kris, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button on their respective channels, and be sure to give this video a like. And if you're listening to the audio only, we appreciate you guys as well. Once again, the final score from the Toyota Center, which was today, on the regional MT that involved the school from Austin, the state school from Louisiana, and the school from College Station, of course, the University of Houston Cougars. The Cougars come out victorious 70-66. And Kris, the floor is yours, sir. Where can people find you?
Thank you, Andy. Follow me on the platforms Houston Rombar Review on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, Spoutable. Thank you again for all the comments and the viewers. We appreciate it. Stick with us through this season and future seasons. We really do appreciate it. And been around since long as Mr. Yanez has been on this earth. The Houston Rombar Review since 1994. Local name, global perspective.
Kris, you say that, and then the kids I teach say that I'm old. I had to explain what this means to them. They didn't know what this meant, but I digress. Time is relative. Thank you again for each and every single one of you guys. Thanks, Dan, of course, for jumping on for the early portions of the show. We'll fill in for Dan as always. Go Cougs, and we'll be back on Thursday for post-game as Houston takes on Texas State on from Fertitta Center for the second and last non-conference game of the season. Once again, the final score, Houston wins 70-66 over Texas A&M, and they are now 11-0 to begin the 2023-24 season.